The greenhouse was quiet, almost unnervingly so. I had returned after the hospital scare, the lingering smell of smoke still clinging faintly to my hair. My body was fine, thankfully, but my mind had never felt sharper. Carbon monoxide didn't just poison the lungs, it poisoned clarity. And in that haze of survival, one thought stood out. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of Seth's lies. I had walked into the office today determined to purge every trace of neglect. Papers, invoices, and receipts littered the corners, many dating back months. Seth had always been meticulous about appearances, but this was a chaos only he could tolerate. As I sifted through stacks of calendars, a heavy card caught my eye, tucked behind a flap in the week of tab. Curiosity prickled at me. The paper was thick, almost ostentatious, with glossy gold lettering spelling out a name I hadn't seen in months. I pulled it out carefully, my hands shaking, not from weakness, but from the sudden tightening of my chest as my mind connected it's faster than my heart could keep pace. An engagement party? I whispered to no one. My voice trembled slightly. For Seth and Melanie? I flipped the card over. The date was only 2 weeks away. This wasn't a casual dinner. This wasn't a small celebration. It was public, it was formal, and it was definitive. The invite confirmed everything I had feared but never dared to articulate. Seth hadn't just moved on. He had planned this, carefully, quietly, deliberately. I sat back against the chair, letting the card rest on my knees. 2 weeks. That's all the time he had given me before he would parade his betrayal in front of our friends, family, and clients. I could almost hear the laughter in the background, see Melanie's smug smile, feel the weight of the world pressing against my ribs. A sharp knock at the office door startled me. Phoebe. Seth's voice, unaware I had discovered everything, floated from the hallway. I didn't answer. I didn't move. My hand tightened around the invitation like it was a lifeline or a weapon. He stepped inside, his usual charm and casual arrogance filling the space. Hey, he started, but the edge in my silence cut him off. You thought you'd what? I finally said, my voice calm, measured, but firm. Come in and pretend everything's fine while you've been planning a life with her behind my back? His smile faltered. Phoebe, it's not. It's exactly that, I interrupted. I found this. I held the card between us, like a challenge, like evidence that would burn through every lie he had built. He glanced at it, then back at me, and for the first time, I saw hesitation in his eyes. Not shame, not guilt, hesitation. And it felt like power. My power. That night, as I locked up the office and drove home, I realized the rebirth wasn't just metaphorical. Seth had poisoned my life slowly, quietly, but I was done letting it happen. And the first step? Clearing the space, emotionally, legally, and finally, of every toxic element he left behind. The following morning, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed the image of that invitation over and over, the gold lettering shimmering in my memory like a spotlight on Seth's betrayal. I had always known there were cracks, little inconsistencies in his stories, the small evasions I brushed off as stress. But this was full-blown, deliberate, and calculated. I decided I needed more than just the card. I needed proof of the timeline, of the intimacy, of the fact that he had planned this without me. My curiosity wasn't idle, it was survival. I retrieved his calendar from the office again and started cross-referencing dates with emails, invoices, and travel logs I could access. 2 weeks. That was all the time they had given themselves. It wasn't just an engagement. They were preparing for a wedding, complete with celebrations, gifts, and public announcements. And Melanie, I'd always known her reputation. She was beautiful, wealthy, and calculating. She had been the perfect foil, and I realized the cruel truth. Seth had orchestrated their partnership long before I ever suspected. I sank into the chair, running my hands over my face, tasting frustration, hurt, and the cold spark of clarity that had started in the hospital. Why didn't I see it sooner? I muttered to myself. Was I blind? Or did I just refuse to look? The sound of the office door opening made me stiffen. Seth stepped inside, holding a coffee cup like nothing had happened. "Phoebe, can we talk?" I looked up, my eyes steady, the invitation clutched in my hand. "Talk? About what, Seth? About how you planned your engagement while pretending our life meant anything?" He set the coffee down, hesitated, then said, "It's not like that. You have to understand, Melanie and I." I shook my head. "Save it. I understand perfectly. I understand that you've been hiding her, planning your life around her, and you expect me to just not notice." His jaw tightened. "I didn't mean for it to." "Save your excuses," I interrupted, my voice sharper now. "I've survived carbon monoxide, Seth. I've survived danger that could have killed me, and I'm not surviving your lies anymore." He finally looked away, and for the first time, I saw that flicker of fear, or maybe it was realization, that the power dynamic had shifted. I spent the rest of the day preparing, not out of vengeance, but out of protection. I organized my business accounts, reviewed joint financial documents, and made a list of what I needed to secure legally. The engagement invitation had been the catalyst, yes, but the next steps were all mine. As night fell, I stood at my apartment window, looking out over the city lights, and felt a strange calm wash over me. Seth and Melanie's celebration would proceed without me. But I wouldn't just survive it. I would thrive, and I would reclaim everything he tried to take from me, starting with my clarity, my assets, and my dignity. By the next morning, I knew what had to be done. The invitation was more than a slap in the face. It was a declaration of intent. Seth and Melanie had planned a public life, while I remained oblivious, and I refused to be blindsided any longer. I needed someone who could match their cunning with precision, someone I could trust implicitly. Silas Vance, my best friend's older brother. Pragmatic, calm under pressure, and fiercely intelligent. He had always struck me as unshakable, the type of man who could dissect a problem down to its core and eliminate every variable of risk. I grabbed my phone and dialed him, hands trembling more from adrenaline than fear. "Silas," I said as soon as he answered. "I need your help. It's urgent. Seth, he's engaged to Melanie. They're planning a wedding. And he's been liquidating assets, using our joint accounts, and misappropriating my business resources." There was a brief pause. "Phoebe," he said carefully, "start from the beginning. I need details, dates, documentation." I spent the next hour recounting everything I discovered: the invitation, the calendar, the invoices, the strange discrepancies in financial statements, and the subtle but deliberate erasure of my influence in projects we shared. Silas listened without interruption, asking precise questions, his voice calm yet commanding. "Good," he said finally. "We'll need to act quickly and decisively. There's no room for hesitation." Within days, Silas had implemented a strategy that was as meticulous as it was protective. He helped me freeze our joint accounts, ensuring Seth could no longer redirect funds for his engagement or wedding. He guided me through legal documentation to secure ownership of my horticultural business assets, leaving no loophole for him to exploit. And he prepared a comprehensive audit of Seth's client dealings, exposing unethical transactions and misuse of company resources connected to Melanie. "I've never met anyone quite like you, Phoebe," Silas remarked one evening, as we reviewed the final documents together. "You're methodical and focused, but you also have the courage to act when it matters. Most people would crumble under something like this." I felt a flush of warmth at his words. It wasn't just courage, I admitted. It was survival. And maybe clarity. I've had enough of half-truths and deception. Silas nodded, his dark eyes steady and understanding. "Then we move forward and we do it right. No shortcuts. No compromises. You'll reclaim everything you deserve, and he'll face the consequences of his choices." By the time the engagement party rolled around, Seth had no access to the funds he thought he could manipulate. My business was secure, and I had the legal documents to prove it. Melanie's shiny, new life with Seth might have been public, but mine, grounded in honesty, integrity, and clear boundaries, was untouchable. As I stood in my office late that night, reviewing the finalized legal documents with Silas beside me, a sense of profound relief washed over me. I had not only defended my assets but had reclaimed my power. And for the first time in months, I realized there was more to anticipate than loss. There was protection, stability, and perhaps something unexpectedly real with Silas. The morning after finalizing the legal protections felt strangely quiet, almost surreal. My office, once cluttered with invoices and project sketches, now seemed open, breathing. For the first time, I could move through it without the gnawing anxiety that Seth and Melanie were scheming behind my back. But there was still work to do. The legal freeze on joint accounts and the asset lock was only the beginning. Silas arrived as promised, his presence calm and deliberate. "Phoebe, we need to ensure that your business isn't just legally protected, but operationally insulated," he said, scanning the office. "Seth's pattern shows he thrives on distraction. Let's eliminate any avenues for disruption." I followed him, carrying folders of contracts, financial statements, and emails he had requested. Together, we reviewed every line, every clause. Silas pointed out areas where Seth had attempted subtle control, over suppliers, over client accounts, over scheduling. "This is more than deceit. It's manipulation," he said. "And now it's powerless." We created a step-by-step plan. My suppliers were notified of the new account arrangements. Clients were reassured about continuity. Any communications that could give Seth leverage were documented, archived, or rerouted. As we worked, Silas occasionally looked up, catching my eye with an expression that was equal parts respect and quiet encouragement. "You've done all of this under pressure," he said softly. "Not many could manage it." I felt a faint warmth, a reminder that I wasn't facing this alone. "I couldn't have done it without your guidance," I admitted, though I didn't need to explain how a steady presence had helped me regain my own sense of control. By mid-afternoon, I felt a sense of accomplishment I hadn't felt in months. My business was protected. Seth's manipulations were nullified. And yet, there was another layer I hadn't anticipated: my own emotional clarity. For too long, I had ignored warning signs, excuses, small lies that compounded into a toxic pattern. Watching Silas's methodical approach reminded me that integrity and diligence were more powerful than charm or deception. Later, as the day ended, Silas stayed to help me organize files for a final audit. The light from the window fell across his face, highlighting the quiet intensity I'd always respected. "Phoebe," he said, handing me a folder, "you've rebuilt the foundation. Now you get to choose how you live above it." I smiled, a genuine smile that felt like liberation. "And that life doesn't include pretending things are fine," I said. He nodded.
"Exactly.
"You decide the architecture from here." I realized then that I was no longer just protecting my assets. I was reclaiming my life, the freedom to trust, the freedom to act, and maybe the freedom to let someone like Silas in. Someone real, practical, steady. As I locked the office door that evening, I felt a new confidence settle over me. Seth and Melanie could have their announcement, their plans. But my life, my career, my security, and my heart was mine to build, on foundations that were solid, honest, and entirely my own. The next morning, I walked into the greenhouse with a renewed sense of purpose. The plants seemed to respond, as though they could sense my clarity. Each leaf, each sprout, felt symbolic, proof that life could thrive when nurtured under honest care. For months, I had been allowing Seth's manipulation to bleed into every aspect of my life, and now, step by step, I was reclaiming my space. Silas arrived mid-morning, carrying his usual understated efficiency. "I thought we should start with your client contacts," he said, pulling up a chair beside me. "If Seth has been siphoning your network, we need to assert control before Melanie can make any move." I handed him my laptop, showing him correspondence and contracts that had been disrupted. He made some changes behind my back, I admitted. Little things, redirecting payments, reassigning projects, trying to make it look like I was negligent. Silas frowned. Classic misdirection. But now we document, notify, and neutralize. We drafted emails to key clients, carefully explaining changes in account management and reaffirming my direct involvement in all projects. Silas's voice, calm and deliberate, guided me through each word. "This isn't just about proving competence," he said quietly. "It's about reclaiming authority. You own this." As I typed, he reached over and nudged a folder toward me. "And here's the list of suppliers he tried to manipulate. We can renegotiate terms directly." I felt a flicker of something unexpected, gratitude that bordered on warmth. Silas had always been the practical one, the one who saw the structural integrity of situations as clearly as he saw the literal foundations of buildings. Yet here he was, supporting me not with charm or grand gestures, but with precision and respect. By the afternoon, phone calls and emails were complete. My clients were reassured. My suppliers were back under honest contracts. It was tedious work, but the satisfaction of setting everything straight was palpable. Silas watched me from the corner, quietly proud. "You're good at this," he said, even under pressure. I looked up at him, meeting his steady gaze. "I've had the right teacher," I replied, a small smile tugging at my lips. Later, we walked through the newly reorganized office together, checking the final documents. "You've done more than protect your business," Silas said, lowering his voice. "You've reclaimed yourself. That's rarer than most people realize." I felt my heart swell, not with obligation, but with trust. The trust that comes from seeing someone act with integrity when no one else is watching. "And now," I said, "I get to live above it, honestly." Silas gave a rare, genuine smile. "Exactly. And maybe, in that life, there's room for partnership. Not manipulation, not schemes, just honesty." I nodded, the idea settling in me like sunlight through glass. For the first time, I wasn't just reclaiming territory professionally. I was opening myself to a possibility that felt safe, steady, and entirely real. With Silas by my side, I could finally breathe again. Even with the account secured and my client network restored, I felt the remnants of Seth's influence lingering, like weeds in the soil of my life. I realized that reclaiming the greenhouse and my finances was only half the battle. I needed to confront the personal aftermath. Silas arrived early, carrying a cup of coffee for each of us. "Thought you might need this," he said, handing me the steaming cup. His eyes held that quiet attentiveness that had always grounded me. I smiled, accepting it, feeling a warmth I hadn't allowed myself to notice before. "I do," I admitted. "I'm exhausted emotionally, mentally. Even though we've fixed the finances, his shadow still feels heavy." Silas nodded knowingly. "It lingers until you actively clear it out. You've been fighting him on paper. Now you need to fight it in life." I followed him around the greenhouse, pulling out neglected plants, repotting those that had been left too long in dark corners, trimming vines that had overgrown. Each action felt symbolic, removing what didn't belong, giving space for new growth. Silas didn't hover, but his presence beside me was comforting, his quiet commentary a gentle guide rather than interference. "See this," he said, pointing to a struggling fern. "It's not beyond repair. With care, it can thrive. Same as you." I laughed softly, feeling a little embarrassed at how easily the metaphor mirrored my own life. "I think I need more care than the fern," I said. "You're already giving yourself that," he replied, glancing at me with a hint of a smile that made my chest tighten. "Sometimes, the most resilient growth comes after the harshest pruning." We worked together for hours, hands occasionally brushing when passing pots or tools. Each contact was electric but comforting, the kind of warmth that spoke of safety rather than danger. I realized I hadn't felt that ease with anyone in years, not with Seth, not even with myself fully. As the sun dipped low, painting the greenhouse in gold, Silas stepped back and admired our work. "You've done it," he said simply. "You've cleared the roots. Everything that was choking you out is gone." I exhaled, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment, but more than that, relief. Relief that I could finally see myself clearly again, not as a victim of manipulation, but as someone capable of resilience and growth. Silas lingered beside me, his hand brushing against mine briefly. I didn't pull away. "And," he said softly, "sometimes clearing the roots allows something beautiful to take their place." Something worth nurturing. I turned to him, heart beating faster, realizing that the safe, steady foundation I'd been craving wasn't just in the greenhouse or my finances. It was here, in the quiet trust of someone who valued honesty as much as I did. For the first time in months, I smiled freely, letting myself feel the possibility. With Silas, I could finally let life, and perhaps love, grow without fear. Even with the bank accounts frozen and the greenhouse stabilized, I sensed the last traces of Seth's influence trying to creep back into my life. It was subtle, an unexpected client call mentioning delays that matched Seth's old tactics, an anonymous email hinting at behind-the-scenes sabotage. These were the final weeds I had to uproot. Silas arrived that morning with his usual calm precision. "I've reviewed the contracts and client communications," he said, handing me a neatly organized folder. "Everything's airtight. If anyone tries to interfere, it will show immediately." I glanced at him, grateful and suddenly aware of how much I relied on his steadiness. "Thank you," I said quietly. "I couldn't have done this alone." "You never had to," he replied, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I just make sure you get to do it without extra damage." We spent the morning cross-referencing accounts, confirming that no funds had moved and that every client interaction was protected. It was tedious, meticulous work, but it felt almost meditative. I caught myself relaxing more than I had in months, the weight of betrayal gradually lifting from my shoulders. Later, we walked through the greenhouse together, inspecting the plants and layouts. I paused to touch a thriving rose bush, its blossoms open and healthy after weeks of neglect. "It's beautiful," I whispered. "I never thought it could recover so well." "Neither did it," Silas said softly, watching me with those steady, perceptive eyes. "But sometimes the roots are stronger than we think." I turned to him, feeling the heat rise in my chest. "You're right," I admitted. "And I think I've learned to trust again. To actually believe in something growing from honesty, not manipulation." Silas's hand brushed mine almost accidentally, but we didn't move apart. "You've earned it," he said, his voice low, reassuring. "Both your trust and your freedom. And you deserve someone who nurtures it rather than poisons it." The moment lingered, charged but gentle. I realized then that my rebirth wasn't just professional, it was personal. I could finally let someone in without fear of betrayal. I looked up at Silas and saw not just a pragmatic lawyer or a protective figure, but someone whose loyalty and quiet strength made me feel safe. Truly safe. We finished the walkthrough, locking up tools, and reviewing our final checklist. Everything was secure. Everything was ours now, legally, professionally, emotionally. I exhaled, a long, freeing breath, feeling the last tendrils of Seth's deception fall away. As we exited the greenhouse, the late afternoon sun caught Silas's face. He turned to me, his expression unreadable for a heartbeat, then softened. "So," he said, with a teasing tilt of his head, "now that the weeds are gone, what about planting something new?" I laughed, a full, genuine laugh I hadn't let myself hear in months. "I think it's time," I said. "Something real this time." And for the first time in ages, I felt the thrill of possibility. Not the fear of betrayal, but the excitement of growth, partnership, and love that was finally, undeniably mine. The morning air in the greenhouse smelled sweeter than ever. Sunlight poured across the rows of flourishing plants, and for the first time in months, I moved among them without anxiety. The carbon monoxide scare, Seth's betrayal, the financial chaos, it all felt like a distant shadow, something I'd survived and left behind. Silas was already there, kneeling beside a new batch of seedlings, hands steady and sure. "Morning," he said, glancing up with that familiar half-smile. "Looks like your garden forgives you faster than your ex ever could." I laughed, feeling a lightness that had been absent for far too long. "I think the garden and you have taught me patience," I admitted. He straightened, brushing dirt from his hands, and for a moment we just stood there, letting the warmth of the sun and the quiet of the greenhouse fill the space between us. "You've earned every bit of it," Silas said softly. "Your focus, your courage. You didn't just survive Seth, You've grown beyond him." I felt a swell of gratitude, and something else, a flutter of anticipation that made my chest tight in a good way. "I never realized how much weight I was carrying," I said. "How many lies I had allowed to shadow my life. But now I feel free. And I feel ready for what's real." Silas stepped closer, his presence grounding and electric all at once. "Then maybe it's time to plant something new," he said, eyes steady on mine, voice low. "A future built on truth, care, and honesty, one we create together." I smiled, the corners of my mouth lifting involuntarily. "Yes," I whispered. "That sounds perfect." He reached out, taking my hand gently, and I felt the connection solidify, not just as friends or allies, but as partners. The warmth of his hand was a promise of trust, loyalty, and safety. In that simple, grounding gesture, I realized I had finally reclaimed my life, not just my garden, but my heart, my integrity, my future. Later that afternoon, we walked the greenhouse together, planning new sections and imagining blooms we hadn't dared plant before. Our laughter echoed through the glass halls, a symphony of possibility. Silas teased about sunlight management and seedling diplomacy, and I found myself matching his humor effortlessly, the years of fear and betrayal melting away with each shared joke. By evening, the greenhouse glowed golden, each plant a testament to patience, care, and honest effort. Silas and I paused at the center, looking out over the thriving greenery. "This," he said, voice soft but sure, "is only the beginning." I leaned into him, heart light, free, and full. "I can't wait to see what we grow," I whispered. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt completely safe, completely seen, and completely loved, truly, honestly, and without fear. With Silas by my side, I knew that whatever storms might come, our roots were strong, and our life together would flourish, just like the garden we had nurtured from the ground up. The weeds were gone, the air was clean, and the future was ours to cultivate.